Texans versus Titans. The old Oilers are coming to town. We got Will Levis, a.k.a. Gosh Allen, coming to town facing C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans. A lot of history here. I want to ask this. I've been asking this all day. Where is the hate? Do you think the hate in this rivalry was kind of built up in the offseason? It was built up last year with the uniform stuff. Do you feel like the hate has died down a little bit? Given the fact that Tennessee right now, they're almost in tank territory. They're the second worst team in the league. They would have the second pick in the draft. Texans kind of in firm control of the division, bigger goals. Do you think the hate is where it needs to be for this to get up to the level of venom that we've had recently?
No, I don't know that the hate's where it has been in the past, and I feel like that's always going to be the case when one team's a little bit worse, or in this case, a lot bit worse than the other team. Obviously, the offseason, hey, they won't let us use the color we want to use. Like that storyline came to the forefront yet again. So there was a little bit of that in the offseason. Then you had to go watch them play football, and you're like, oh, okay, like yeah, they come here once, and we'll go there once, and it's later in the year, so we'll worry about that when it gets here. And here it is this week, and it's like, you just kind of like, oh, that's what you got going on over there? Yeah, all right. Well, I don't know that there's as much – like when they're better, it's easier to hate them. Like when they're an actual challenge, when they're competing for an AFC South championship, like when Vrabel and Derrick Henry were doing their thing, like it was easy to be like, all right, can't lose to these guys. Like now you can't lose to them. But you just kind of feel sorry for the Titans with how sorry they are.
Yeah, and I felt like the Titans were that they were kind of like a restaurant that didn't know what they wanted to do. They were basically like they started out as an Italian restaurant, and then they ended up just trying to do everything, and they really don't do anything well. You fired Mike Vrabel. You brought in a coach. You actually fired Mike Vrabel quickly, and Amy Adams said because she wanted to get out in front of the coaching search. You end up getting a guy that you could have gotten probably yesterday in Callahan. Then you think, and from a Texans point of view, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, they're rebuilding. This is probably a smart move by the Tennessee Titans. They're going to rebuild. They're going to figure stuff out. They're not just going to try to tread water. They're not just going to be mediocre. And then all of a sudden they're signing Snead. They're trading for Snead. They're signing Snead. They're trading for Calvin Ridley, overpaying for Calvin Ridley. They're getting in the running back market, and they're getting Tony Pollard. Like there was really just no identity for the Tennessee Titans this offseason. And on the other hand, you have the Texans. They went through their rebuild, went a lot faster than we thought it would. And then they end up with C.J. Stroud, the same draft in which the Titans end up with Will Levis. And it just seems like the Tennessee Titans, I don't know exactly what they're doing and what exactly they're trying to do. They just don't seem to have an identity as an organization.
It feels like they half-assed it. Like they should have gone fully in, which is, keep Vrabel, give him a little bit of an opportunity to fine-tune things and then see what you've got. Or tear it all down, get a guy that is going to be here for a while. Offensive mind, that made sense because you got to figure out what you have with Will Levis. You got to be able to draw out but you could have found out about Will Levis without giving him a big-time wide receiver and investing heavily in the running back spot. Like, Spears, the guy that they finished the year with, last year, taking some time away from Derrick Henry. Like, you could have had him as the main back, got another veteran, not spent a whole bunch of money on Tony Pollard, could have spent some different money on the offensive line. There were some worthwhile offensive linemen. They had the worst offensive line in football last year for a good portion of the season. Yeah, I know they went and made a draft pick to improve it, but could have spent some more money there to help things out as well. So they kind of half-assed it. They kind of tried to say, okay, well, we actually already know about this guy, which they didn't and they don't. So we're going to try to just kind of put our foot on the accelerator. We're going to accelerate, push our chips into the middle of the table, and then it's just be kind of, and then they stink right now. And and they're in a hole too. Like that's another thing too, Landry. When you half-ass something like they have, you put yourself further back because now you have work that you have to do to tear down what you have to get into the real rebuild.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing about it is that you almost, from a Texans point of view, you almost want them to start winning some games. I mean, it's not the worst thing. I think the dream scenario is for the Texans to clinch the division, wrap up the division, and then week 18 not to mean anything, and you're basically worsening their draft stock. So you lose to the Titans week 18. I'm getting ahead of myself, but that's kind of where I'm at. I've seen some of like the Titans fans and the people that I look at to just kind of get a pulse of what's going on. Because I'll be honest, I'm not going to put myself through pain and watch full Titans games at this point. I don't really benefit from it. I'll watch Colts game right now because they're a little bit of a factor, a little bit of a threat, a little bit interesting. But from a Texans point of view, I think the best thing that can happen is Josh Allen has a good end to the season and they decide to run it back with him, because I just don't have any confidence on, I have any fear in Will Levis. And that's what I find myself watching. The other thing is this: I don't know if their coach is good or not. Like there's no context clues of whether or not this guy can coach football or not. And some people will say, well, no, duh, they've won 2 games. I would disagree, because I thought Jonathan Gannon last year, even when the Cardinals were doing bad, I think there were signs that Jonathan Gannon kind of knew how to coach and knew what the hell he was doing. And as far as being able to balance overseeing a process and a rebuild, I thought Jonathan Gannon actually showed some signs of a guy that might know what the hell he's doing, like in specific situations. Does that make sense? Because the Texans kind of had an awkward phase before they got to D'Amico, where you didn't necessarily have the opportunity to bring in the guy who was going to be able to oversee both a rebuild and get you to the promised land. They basically just hit rock bottom, and it was such a dumpster fire a few years ago to where you had to go get guys that nobody else wanted. And in the long term, much like San Francisco with Tom Sula and Chip Kelly, you end up finding your guy, and Nick Caserio oversees that whole process. I thought that I saw Jonathan Gannon last year, and I said, okay, this guy seems to kind of know what he's doing. Like if you actually watch specific stuff, he seems to figure out the situations. They actually have the quarterback too. You think maybe in Kyler Murray. I'm not dismissing Callahan as that. That's not what I'm doing. I'm not sitting here hating on what Callahan is or isn't. I'm just saying at this point, I feel like you don't have the quarterback, and I don't know about this coach at all. I know nothing. I know nothing about him. I've seen him do some interesting suspect things early in the year when we were still paying attention to him, but they don't have a clue about their coach, and the quarterback. I think you would lean on probably not.
Well, here's what I do know about him. He comes from that Cincinnati tree, or he comes from Cincinnati from that, that McVay tree, because Taylor was the coach under McVay, and then he's in Cincinnati, and he was the offensive coordinator. Now, obviously, Zach Taylor, the head coach, called the plays, but he's the offensive coordinator. Bengals have the best passing offense in football. So they didn't miss a beat without him. and the Titans, I know they've had some injuries at quarterback, but even when Levis has played, they're bottom 4 passing offense. And that, you got to be able to throw the football consistently and successfully in the NFL to win. And he's not getting it done with a invested in quarterback and a heavily invested in wide or offense, because of what they've done with Pollard, who can also catch the ball to the backfield, and Ridley. And that's another scary thing. And another one of those rebuild faux pas is you want to find out about your coach. You want to empower him and find out about your coach, even if the wins and losses aren't there. And so they're not really doing a great job of that, because he's got a good, solid excuse for this or that. If you want to say, hey, we didn't really get that. Well, my quarterback was hurt. Well, the offensive line wasn't good enough because the GM didn't give me the right tools, or only had one wide receiver and I needed more than that. Like, he's got excuses. So you're not really finding out about him. Whereas, to your point, Gannon kind of coached through some of those excuses. And certainly on his specialty, the defense, you started to see some things here and there.
Well, the other thing is there's no identity. Like it's really hard to say, okay, Mike Vrabel's a really good coach, and we're going to get rid of Mike Vrabel. And on one hand, you're going to rebuild, and then you're going to probably, I would say they probably overpaid the 2 top free agents, which is not a recipe for success. Like it's not, you can have really good off seasons and free agency, but typically it's not a recipe for success to pay players like Snead and players like Calvin Ridley. Typically we look back at that 2-3 years down the line and say, well, don't know why they did that.
I don't know why any team, especially a team like the Titans in the situation they were in, I don't know why any team would accelerate a bunch of big money into guys who are not like, if you want to spend a whole bunch of money on offensive linemen, they can play for and be really good for half a decade, like or more. Like if you want to build a really nice offensive line and continue to try to find some things out behind it, but like corners are good for like 4 or 5 years and that's it. Snead's already had 2 or 3 of those years where he's been good. So it's like wide receivers. I mean, they can drop off in a hurry. That they're sort of, especially guys who aren't the elitist of the elite. They're sort of quarterback and offense dependent. Like they spent their money in weird spots. You had the worst offensive line in football, and your draft pick was your big offensive line investment. Like it's a poorly constructed team.
Yeah, it's just there's no identity. Amy Adams Stank, I think, is the worst owner in the NFL. I know she doesn't. She kind of gets a free pass, but I think the Stanky one is the worst owner in the NFL. I don't even think it's really close.
As I was reading about the whole Jets debacle, and now that they fired their GM,
we'll localize that today too.
Everybody's singing on the Jets, and they talk about how the owner gets involved in meddling, and there's a lot of the majority, in fact, almost every owner, I would not want them involved with my football in any way, shape, or form. I would not want them saying, do this, don't do that. I would not want them saying you can or can't spend this money, or you can't spend this money. I would want them to say, I can't spend the money. It feels like there's probably a decent chance she's meddled. We don't know, but it feels like
he talks to her every night. Like, there's been quotes where they've kind of said as much.
It feels like she meddles way more than most owners. And I would not be surprised if part of their operation this past offseason was to satisfy what she wanted from just headlines and feel good perspective.
Well, yeah, she got rid of Vrabel, and that was really interesting. And then now here they are. I mean, they went from overachieving with Vrabel, I would say. Like even the year they got the 1 seed and lost to Cincy in the first round, that team had no business being the 1 seed. And then they went to an AFC championship before that. I thought they kind of overachieved for sure. Will Anderson. We don't know if Will Anderson's going to play. I got 3 words for you when it comes to Will Anderson and the status. And I'm seeing it brought up. And by the way, Derek Barnett, I think the highest graded PFF Texan on defense. That matches the eye test. There's nothing controversial there. We watched it. We saw how good Derek Barnett was. But I will say this, 3 words for you. Rest Will Anderson. I don't, just relax, ice up, rehab, get ready. Rest Will Anderson. If he wants to come back, Jacksonville game before the bye, fine. Even if you want to sit him out for that, cool. You can win without him. Get him 100% fully healthy. Let this defense continue to hold down the fort. And then the final stretch of the season, you get Will Anderson out there. You have a 100% healthy Will Anderson down the stretch with the division in grasp. Then you are in excellent shape. And the Texans have that luxury right now. So that's my 3 words of the week. Rest Will Anderson.
It would not surprise me if the Terminator hits the practice field. Now, I'm not saying he's
and he will want to, and
he will want to.
And there is no fact about. I am protecting Will Anderson from himself. Rest Will Anderson.
Look, the opponents that are coming up in the next 2 weeks, plus the bye week. If there's any chance that he's going to be 100% with rest him. I'm with you. You. Now, if they look around, they're like, yeah, this is as good as it's going to get. All right, cool. Get him out there some limited snaps like Nico. And let him satiate his hunger to get back on the field, and then have him ready for that post-bye sprint that the Texans have.
What was the word you just used?
Satiate.
Look at you, dude. Goodness gracious. How many times you use that this month?
That's the first time.
That's impressive, dude. What's behind your head right now?
I got some wall art.
Okay.
You want me to pull it off the wall and show it to you?
No, I mean, I was just kind of curious what's going on.
Critical of my background, so I got a new background.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on here.
So it's a deck of cards with the Texans playing cards.
Oh, okay.
And I put them in a frame.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually sell these. If the people like it, they can buy them.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now it looks like I just set up you trying to sell stuff. Yeah.
No, you wouldn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but kind of looked like a setup right there. Better improvement this week for the Texans, the offensive line or Bobby Slowick? Which one do you have more confidence in? Do you have more? You should have brought that down. Look at that now.
1 second.
Now you're just completely ruining it. I think the offensive line, it's been an interesting layout of the offensive line where, look at this effing guy, where you have you have D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud singing the praises of the offensive line. Despite the fact they were average, whatever you want to say. Bobby Slowick, on the other hand, we saw good and bad from Bobby Slowick last game. It was definitely better than we'd seen. Which do you have more confidence in improving, the offensive line or Bobby Slowick this week?
Well, for me, it's Slowick because he's going to get more opportunities and he's going to get more use out of Nico Collins. There was very clearly a limit to what he could do with Nico Collins. They didn't want him to have a full workload coming back. So Slowick's going to get a little bit more. And then the unfortunate he benefits from the offensive line playing slightly better. So like as they play a little bit better, like he looks a lot better. Like he's going to be able to do a lot more, and so can CJ Stroud. So, but just as far as like what we expected out of them coming into the game, how they performed, I liked Slowick's improvement, and I would think he can build on that, especially with the ability to use a little bit more Nico Collins as well. So I believe that, and this is a good to be feeling themselves coming out of Monday Night Football. This is a pretty stiff test for the offensive line with this Titans team. Like, so let's see if you can carry some of that, small bits of improvement in back-to-back weeks. And let's see if you could do it against actually a fairly formidable defensive line.
Yeah. I mean, especially depending on who does and doesn't go, it's going to be a tough matchup on the inside, especially if they have guys that are full go on the inside. This is going to be a surprisingly tough matchup. Look, the offensive line is something that you just have to overcome. It's not something that's going to be a strength of your team. It's not something that you're going to feel great about. It's something that you have to make do. You have to make do with this offensive line. You have to overcome the limitations of this offensive line, and that's what's going to have to happen. So when you talk about better improvement, I think Bobby Slowick is going to be the key to that. CJ Stroud's a key to that. And then all the rest of the guys, Joe Mixon, et cetera, are a key to that. It's just accepted. It's reality. So sometimes they'll look better than other times, but it's going to have to be something that you overcome. It's a natural hurdle. It's what it is. It's like having to take a road trip without a fully functioning air conditioner. Like, you're going to have to figure it out. Sometimes you're going to have to roll down the windows. Sometimes you're going to have to maybe throw some water on the face. Like, you're going to have to
get those little fans that moms have at baseball games.
Stop and get out of the car, whatever you got to do. Like right now, and it's not fully out. Like it's not dead. Like, it's not like they're just snapping the ball to CJ Stroud and it's not all the time 4 guys just running at him trying to take his head off. But right now you're basically taking a trip. Let's just say you're taking the same trip that you just took. You're going from Houston to Dallas. It's 100 degrees and you don't have AC. And sometimes it's a seamless route. Sometimes it's more uncomfortable than others. Sometimes it's hellacious. But you have the opportunity to get there. It's never going to be perfect. That's what the Texans are doing right now.
Yeah, and they could wreck this game, like the offensive line. If they have a really bad game, like they can make this unnecessarily close and they can make this a difficult thing for the offense. I do believe the Texans defense is going to have a big day and the offensive line's performance doesn't affect them. But the way that this front seven for the Titans can play, like if this offensive line's not good on Sunday, like it's going to be an ugly, nasty, low scoring affair. And they absolutely possess the ability to wreck the game. Like, they have not solidified their floor to the point where, even on a bad day, they're going to be okay. Like, no, on a bad day, they're really bad, and CJ Stroud's in a lot of trouble. And so that can't be an element of Sunday for this offensive line if they want to. What did Titus Howard say a couple weeks ago? If we do our job, nobody's going to talk about us. Well, you got to keep doing your job, and you got to do it a little bit better than you did Monday. And then it's got to continue to get better.
Yeah, and I mean, I think he's kind of buried right now, but I mean, you got Jeffrey Simmons. I don't always keep up with how he is, and then you have Tavondre Sweat. That's a tough interior. Like I think we're going to see some bad reps from Shaq Nation and Juice Scruggs, depending on who goes there. That's a very underrated interior, and that is a lot of athleticism. And look, we've talked about Amy Adams Stank. She definitely likes beating the Texans, and sometimes you kind of she for whatever reason they like Amy Adams a lot, and they talk about Miss Amy is what they call her, which I think is really weird. But Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat, that's a pretty good interior. And I would be keeping a close eye on number 69 and number 70 because they're going to have their work cut out for them big time. I don't know that you're running the ball up the middle. I'll put it this way. I don't think you're running the ball up the middle with Sweat and Simmons in there.
Oh, you mean you don't think that Juice Scruggs, Shaq Mason, and Jarrett Patterson can move those guys off the ball?
I don't. I don't at all. And I actually think that's the area to look at for the Titans. And I don't know how much juice they have. I mean, maybe I don't think they're dying down just yet. Sweat last week had 5 tackles against the Vikings, and I see that Simmons played. So I just keep an eye on that interior. That's going to be kind of a rough matchup for them.
Well, and they've got enough juice off the edge too to take advantage if the interior, even if the interior isn't getting a pressure, but they just kind of set things and move it back a little bit and force a little bit deeper drop for Stroud. Key and Landry can take advantage of the other guys. Arden Key and Harold Landry can take advantage of the other guys having some success. And, Titus and Laramie haven't been perfect. So, I mean, it only takes a little bit to kind of throw this offense out of sync and out of rhythm. So the Titans have the guys to do it. I just don't know if they're going to consistently do it for 4 quarters on Sunday.
Daniel Anima says, did the new O-line get better at run blocking, or were the Cowboys just the bad? They won't face a worse D-line than they did with the Cowboys. I'll put it that way. I don't know. Like it can be both, but they won't face a better D-line. They won't face a worse D-line than the one they faced with the Cowboys.
A worse D-line or a better D-line to get right against. Yeah.
Space Age 713 says, Landry, you weren't fond of Sweat coming here. Now you're afraid. Yeah, that's a 5-minute timeout, my friend. You got to put your nose in the corner on that one. That was definitely not the case. I was actually into perhaps him sliding to the Texans. I like what Sweat brings.
I didn't,
my friend. That's like Amy Adams Stank saying she doesn't care about the old blue, mi amigo. That is a straight up lie.
Perhaps he confused you for me because I was not a big fan of Sweat coming to the Texans.
That damn sure wasn't me. I was actually wondering, could he fall? I did not think he was going to go as early as he did with the Titans, but I thought as from a talent perspective and what Tavondre Sweat can do, that was definitely not my friend. I want to touch on like some history. I just want to ask you this when it comes to the history of the Texans and the Titans. Do you think, because I've talked about this, do you think that, like, let's say that the Houston gets the NFL franchise back and they come back as the Oilers, do you think that changes the overall mindset of how people look at the organization had they come back the Oilers? And the reason that I ask this is because obviously there's a lot of people who still kind of lean towards the Oilers, and they talk about the love you blue and they talk about the good old days. But you basically had to adjust, and you had to embrace a completely different team with the knowledge that the team that was once here is in your division. The Browns didn't have to deal with that. The Browns didn't come back as like the Cleveland whatevers. They came back as the Browns after going away. So when dad takes son to the stadium and they're sitting in the stands, dad can say, man, I remember when Jim Brown used to run on that field and then throw women off balconies. I remember the good old days. Or when Bernie Kosar used to play on that field and then go drink 30 beers after games. Like, they at least have that type of bond and those type of memories. Do you think that there would be like more of a, I don't want to say a vibe, but a little bit more bonding over the Texans if that would have just continued had they come back the Oilers?
So I don't think you would care at all about the Titans really if they'd come back as the Oilers. Like, I don't know that there'd be any sort of like, because people miss, like, yes, there was a decent football team, and then it turned into a pretty good football team real quick. But like, people miss the laundry. People miss the logo and the jerseys. Like, I don't know there'd be as much vitriol or hate or even a care about them as far as, yeah, they're a division opponent. But yeah, if this was the Oilers, there'd be a little bit more fabric connected to the history of professional football in this town. Certainly.
Yeah.
And I think it would lessen the give a crap of the Tennessee football team.
Yeah. And I think that the manner in which the Texans functioned for 20 years, I think that's part of the apathy. I think there would have been apathy, but I don't think the disgust would have intensified as much had they been the Oilers. You know what I'm saying? Like the Browns, for the most part, for 20 years have functioned as awful. Like it's been a disaster since they returned. 30 years, however long it's been. But there's still kind of like that love, and like you can hang on some good memories. When you go damn near a quarter of a century without making an AFC championship game, you have a reputation of a organization that's not willing to make a lot of risks. I think for a while there was a little bit of entitlement with the Texans where they kind of tried to create traditions that didn't exist. They, instead of letting traditions build, they tried to they tried to create some traditions and almost act like, oh, this has been going on for 3 years. This is what we do it. I think there was a little bit of cluelessness there. And I think that kind of, whenever that frustration is there, and it gets high with the Browns, but I think it just kind of intensifies when you kind of looked up as an outside of the team that they loved the most. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
But I will say this. I think this is
nostalgia is one of the most incredible feelings in the world. Like there'd be an association of nostalgia with the football team in Houston if they were still the Oilers. There's not decades of nostalgia like there was for the Oilers. Like it will take 50 years for you to have anywhere close to the level of history that the Oilers had in this town.
And Isaiah says, I'm 26. I don't care about the Oilers, just the colors. Yeah, I think it is kind of funny how some of these boomers do get a little carried away with the uniforms. I thought that was a lot last year. And some people, it's our uniforms. Why would you want them at this point? They're gone. It's over. Like, what do you want? You want to wear them? You're not the Oilers. So I have thought that was weird. I don't think the young fan base cared as much. And I thought it's just kind of a weird argument. I thought it was weird that Amy Adams was so obsessed with it too. Like, I think on both ends, it was really weird. Like, you just basically just want to hold on to it for your pops. But I'll also say this. I understand all sides of POV. Like, I can't imagine, and he might've been a little bit of a horse's ass, and I'm sure he was a jerk at times. I can't imagine, like, if I'm Amy Adams going up with Bud Adams, all the crap that you had to witness your dad take from some of the people of Houston, like going to a game or whatever. Like, from my perspective, like, if that's my dad, I probably want to stick it to the city as well, whether it's petty or not. Like, I do think it's important to understand all point of views. So as much as I talk Amy Adams stank and all that, I can understand that I'm sure Bud Adams didn't get like the nicest letters or the nicest things said to him whenever he would come back to Houston. Remember the double birds?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I certainly understand that element of it. Look, the NFL, they're missing an opportunity with their uniform restrictions, because if the Titans could and the Texans could, it'd be H-Town Blue versus the Oilers in this matchup. But the NFL is not going to allow that. You only get X number of alternate uniforms. Like, that's what both these franchises would be down to do. Like, they'd be down to do that. Like, because she loves throwing the Oilers logo at Houston, as evidenced by the fact they wore it last year. But
yeah, and she got obsessed, and she like got mad at who was she mad at? She was mad at the U of H for wearing it or something like that.
Yeah, she's mad at UH is Columbia blue uniforms. Somehow didn't care when Rice did it though.
Look at this guy.
You gotta love the machine gun and then he gets the 2 up. It's the 1, then the 1, and then the.
Nathan asks a very sensitive question. I actually saw this at my my daughter's 15-month checkup. Right there in the parking garage, right to the left, perfect view of the Astrodome and NRG Stadium. Yes, the Astrodome is still, I would say, alive. I'll just say it's up.
It's still standing.
It's still standing, and it looks terrible. It is so sad, man. It is so sad.
Tear it down.
It's so sad, dude. Like it's awkward, man. Like, God, jeez, that
tear it down.
Are they ever going to do that? That's the question. That was the weirdest battle, and now we're just kind of stuck with it. It looks so bad. It's so sad.
It does not look good. It does not look good. There's not the $1 billion plan that showed up a couple weeks ago was dumb. Nobody's dumping that amount of money in there. If they truly have $750 million in private money, then hand it over to the county to tear it down.
Just get it out of there.
Oh, you can't tear it down because of the asbestos. Okay, well, if you can't tear it down because of the asbestos, how can you use it? You can't.
Don't refurb it. It doesn't need to be there. Like, make a big parking lot. Hell, make an area to go hang out. I think it's also kind of a major reason why there's a late arriving crowd. Like, there's not much going on outside the tailgating outside the stadium. So if you want to go get a few drinks or something before the game, like you're not going to Main Street. I mean, I love Quiznos. I love a lot of that, like Slim Chickens. I love like Olive Garden's great. But
you're not pre-gaming at the Olive Garden.
No, like open up, set up a bar scene, open up, like make it to where there's more ins and outs of the stadium. Like it's literally just sitting there. Like Yankee Stadium's torn down, pretty historic stadium. Jerry World's torn down. Just get rid of it. Looks weird. It's like you can't, like, I don't want to say like that you can't say, because it's a very generalized thing. But like if you're a representative of Amy Adams Stank and the Titans, and you're a representative of H-Town Pride in sports, and you inherit all opinions, or you inherit all realities, it's hard to criticize Amy Adams for hanging on to Oilers colors when the Astrodome's still up and just lingering around and stinking everything up. That's kind of more pathetic. Like that's a lot worse. Like, I would rather inherit an owner who's obsessed with colors and her dad's team and maybe putting it in an attic than I would having to go to NRG and see the disgrace that is the current state of the Astrodome. Not the former memories of the Astrodome, the current state of the Astrodome.
I mean, look, I wish the rodeo or the Texans could make a decision by themselves without anybody interacting with them about what to do, because I know what they would do. I know they'd get rid of it. But it's not just the rodeo's decision or the Texans' decision. I mean, why couldn't they do? I mean, you talked about put some stuff there. Like, I've heard from so many people about the Texan Live thing around the Cowboys.
Carringtons, you crazy, man.
Yeah, like why couldn't you do something like that? I mean, you know what Crane's about to do? Tear all that crap down across 45 and build a giant entertainment area.
Yeah, I mean, like, make it badass. Hell, you could even call it Dome, the Dome Gathering or something like that. You put a plaque up.
Gathering?
I don't know, like something to like pay some sort of homage to the Dome. Like, you can do something like that.
I don't want to donate to the Dome Gathering. Well,
I mean, you can make it more tailgate. You can make it more parking. You can make like just get it out of there. It's embarrassing. It's sad. Like it's like wheeling out your like 100-year-old grandpa who used to be the funniest guy in the world, and he can't even like talk. Like it's terrible. Like and save your Jimmy Carter joke, you slime ball. I know what you were thinking there.
I'm laughing at people laughing at Dome Gathering.
That's not like a real proposal. I'm just saying, like,
into a Dome Gathering, what happens at one of those?
Probably a lot of, I don't know, like, God, I'm just gonna stay out of that. I don't know. Bone in the dome. I'm just saying, like, you can call it. You can pay some homage to the dome. You put a plaque there. Here once the eighth wonder of the world once was here or whatever.
I still like. I mean, look, if you're not going to do something with like an entertainment thing there, make it parking, and then just put plaques where historic things happened in the parking lot.
Yes.
So like,
Stone Cold Steve Austin turned heel here.
I could park at the Stone Cold Steve Austin parking spot, or I could park at the Earl Campbell Monday Night Football parking spot, or I could park at the Beatles parking spot, or the Elvis parking spot, or Muhammad Ali parking spot. Like, you could have plaques everywhere for historic things that happened in the
Knock on the door bar and grill. Bud Adams. There you go. Tear the bitch down. The bitch tears down at 11 a.m. And then the door goes down. I don't know. Do something like that. Figure it out.
Oh, man.
We do not fear the diddler of mayonnaise.
Oh, Will Levis.
Yeah, he sucks. He's not good.
Awful.
His name's Gosh Allen. He is Gosh Allen. Anthony Richardson is LaFar Jackson.
That comes from their draft comparisons.
Yeah, pathetic. Yeah. Like he was being compared to Josh Allen.
You know what I've seen? I've actually, and I don't know if I don't know. You don't love draft comparison talk.
I do. I just don't like. I don't like when we have to compare like every quarterback who's not accurate to Josh Allen. Like it's weird. Like they take like what was Josh Allen's clear worst trait, and they ignore it. And every time a quarterback is inaccurate, he gets compared to Josh Allen. And they do the same thing with Lamar Jackson. Every time there's like a black quarterback that can run, he's Lamar Jackson. Always. Anthony Richardson, Lamar Jackson are nothing alike. They are nothing alike. They're both just black and fast. Like Lamar Jackson won a freaking Heisman. Like he was really, really good in college. Anthony Richardson completed like less than 50% of his passes, and he got hurt all the time. He hurt himself dancing. Like it's just disrespectful that we always compare everyone to Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. I think it's ridiculous.
There's been a big push in the draft community that not everybody has to be comp to like first rounders. Like, so like you have seen more guys get compared to third rounders, to fourth rounders, to like what that player was when they like obviously Terry McLaurin is solid now, but like when he was coming out, he was comped as like a fourth, he ended up as a fourth rounder. So it's like you've seen a push in the draft community to no longer do some of the he's Josh Allen. Like there's a lot more like actually he's Kyle Bowler. Like you've seen some more of those.
Yeah, and then Anthony Richardson's Cam Newton. Oh, you mean the guy that won a Heisman and didn't lose a game as a starter at the D1 level and went number 1 overall? Like it's just
put an entire school on his back for a whole season.
Yeah, it's just really, really weird the way that the comparisons sometimes go with quarterbacks. I find it very, very it's very interesting. Every white pass rusher is JJ Watt. This is true. Like every like lunch pail, Big Ten, farm looking mofo is JJ Watt.
I will say, I called Aiden Hutchinson. I called him Wolverine Watt, and it feels like
you were right about that.
Yeah, I feel like I was on to something this year.
Yeah, he's a good player. He's a very. I mean, he's that works. I mean, that's a guy that was established too.
You remember? Okay, so this is recent. Remember on draft night in 2023 when there were some people that didn't like the Will Anderson trade up because you could have got Lucas Van Ness. Hey, you could have just drafted Lucas Van Ness at 12.
I was thinking Jackson Smith and Jigba at the time. That was my big guy, JSN. The crazy thing about that trade that nobody's talking about?
What's that?
That indirectly you actually led to the Titans taking Will Levis because you made the Will Anderson trade. You traded the second rounder to the Cardinals, and then the Cardinals traded that second round to the Titans, and the Titans used that pick to take Will Levis. So if you think Will Levis sucks and you think that he's kind of holding the old Oilers back, then the Texans are kind of connected to it because if they hadn't made that trade, the Titans might not have taken Will Levis.
There you go. Yeah, 33 overall.
Yeah, so there you go. You checked my work on that? You just thought I made that up?
No, I'm looking to see what players ended up what they ended up doing with the draft picks.
So the other thing about this is like with the Will Levis thing, like as much as I'm shitting on him and talking bad about him, I do acknowledge like it's not a bad pick. Like it's not like at that point, if you just want to kick the tires and you just want to see what's going on there, it's not the worst thing to like churn quarterbacks and see what they can or cannot do. Like it's a helpless area that you're in whenever you have a quarterback that's not elite and he's holding you back. But it's not a bad decision, you know. Like it's not like I sit there and say if they'd have done it 12 or something or even early, even 12 you could maybe understand. It's not like it was like the worst decision that they made to decide to see what they could do with Will Levis.
I mean, if they done it at 12, there's like almost another built-in year that you have to try to figure it out. If he doesn't figure it out in the next few games for them, they can move on. He's a second-round pick.
Yeah, the problem that they get to, and we're going to localize the big news in the NFL in a second. I think this is kind of going to be connected, and we'll just do it right here. A localized lesson from Joe Douglas, and I think you've seen this with Chris Ballard too. These were two general managers who, and Chris Ballard's still in Indianapolis, but these are two guys who were basically getting praised like at uncanny levels from the football nerds. It seemed like they were kind of praising themselves and feeling themselves. The lesson from this is it's all about the quarterback. Mm-hmm. You can do whatever the hell you want. You can have the offensive, defensive rookie of the year. You can put together like this nice array of talent. You can stockpile draft picks. You can what was it that was the catalyst for Chris Ballard? You hit on Quentin Nelson and you hit on Darius Leonard. And at the time you had Andrew Luck, and it's like, man, this guy is the man. Boom! Andrew Luck abruptly retires at the same moment that Lamar Miller is getting a season-ending injury against the Dallas Cowboys in the preseason, and then all of a sudden, boom! Chris Ballard, about a half decade of just meh, and we're not singing his praises. Joe Douglas is God's gift to everything, man. Look at this. Holy crap. Look at all those draft picks. Look at, oh my God, Breece Hall. What a steal that was. Sauce Gardner. Good job, man. That's the offensive and defensive rookies. Look at this Garrett Wilson guy. He's going to be awesome. Zach Wilson takes you down for a few years. You sell your soul for Aaron Rodgers. Boom, you're fired. You're looking for a job. And I think it's the same thing with Ryan Poles right now. I'm not dismissing Caleb Williams. I think if they get him the right coach, I think Caleb Williams can be fine. But all those interviews, all that sticking the chest out, acting like you invented football, like Ryan Poles is the best thing. Quarterback struggling, coach on the hot seat, people kind of wondering if you're as smart as you are. That's the lesson here for me from Joe Douglas. It's all about the quarterback.
And think about how, specifically about the Jets and the Colts, how people talked about, whoa, they're just a quarterback away, as if that's like the easy element, like if that's the easy piece to go and find. Well, that restaurant's, it's really nice. They just need a chef. It's like, oh yeah, they should have got to cook the food. Like,
yeah, you're not gonna function. Like it's not, or else you're just there. Like even like the Colts, Chris Ballard. Like what are you accomplishing? Like if you look at everything that they've done since Andrew Luck, and I guess their first like real big swing was Anthony Richardson. Like that was the swing, and that was their first opportunity, in fairness. But like Tennessee swung early with Will Levis, at least post Ryan Tannehill they swung. But even with Ryan Tannehill, like the reality about Ryan Tannehill and the perception of Ryan Tannehill, I don't think that they're like identical, because for me, like on one hand, you look at Ryan Tannehill and you say, oh man, that guy was never that great. That guy was never elite. He's not even a top 10 guy. I don't disagree. Like I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I will say this. With what Ryan Tannehill was before they brought him in, I think they got more than you could expect from Ryan Tannehill. They went to an AFC championship game. They won multiple divisions. They were the 1 seed one year, kind of overachieved as the 1 seed. And even with all that said, even though he completely overachieved and he maximized the expectations that they could have, I mean, what were you really going to do? I mean, like there was never a chance that that he was going to develop into an elite quarterback. There was never a chance that you were going to really win a Super Bowl, no matter how exciting, some of the upset wins that they had were. So that's kind of the reality of the quarterback situation. Like, even if you make a good decision, then you're pretty much in the same place that Joe Douglas is, which is fired. Right. Tennessee brought in a new general manager, and he actually had like a good version of the Aaron Rodgers deal. And then you have the Aaron Rodgers soul deal, and you're both looking for a job. So Nick Caserio hitting on CJ Stroud, that's what buys him time. You can do whatever you want. That's what buys you time. That's the difference. That's the lesson for me.
No doubt about that. And there's a lot of different places to be in the NFL. It's veteran stopgap. It's bounce back from a miss on a franchise guy, which is what Tennessee had to do after Mariota didn't work out. They went to Tannehill. He got old fast there at the end, so they go to Levis. And then now it's like now you got to bounce back from a franchise guy not being any good, because that's the direction they've taken for 2 seasons. So what are they going to do? They're going to go stopgap again? It depends how much involved the owner wants to be. Are they going to tear this thing down and go with a young guy again? Did they have some shell shock from a couple of years ago when they went and got the guy? It's quarterback. I mean, hell, Texans fans lived it. I mean, for years. From Fitzpatrick, oh, he's fine. Bill O'Brien moves on from him, and then it's the Hoyer Mallet, then it's Osweiler, and then you get the franchise guy and you hit, and then you got a couple of years of purgatory before you get rid of him, and then you got a franchise guy again.
Now, I want to ask this. This might be a little bit dramatic by me, but I think if we like to localize, and that's what we do. And I think what separates this channel, and be sure to subscribe, Stoots and Locker, Texans Talk on the on all podcast formats. Be sure to follow our channels. We got you covered. But I think what separates us is we're going to localize everything throughout the year. It's going to be 365. It's not going to be that's our favorite thing to do is develop talking points. So there's a lot of Texans content. Shout out to all the content. But I think where you kind of separate yourself, especially when you've had to talk for every day of the year for a long time, I think you separate yourself like in the off season by localizing topics. So that's why we localize the Joe Douglas stuff. We don't come here and give you like the Jets POV. This is the Texans point of view. We know our role. And I want to take that to this, because this is a question that I have. With the Joe Douglas departure, do we revisit the 2022 draft? In other words, do you look at it different? Because I think it's really easy to dismiss players early, and sometimes it's a little bit too early. And for a large chunk of 2 years, it was, man, the Texans really made a mistake taking Derek Stingley over Sauce Gardner. And, that they probably should have taken Sauce Gardner. This guy can't stay on the field and all this. And then the Texans take Kenyon Green, not great. And then you have a situation where I think you kind of believed that perhaps they would have liked to have had Breece Hall, but instead the Jets hop him. They take Breece Hall. He wins offensive rookie of the year, and then the Texans end up with Jalen.
Garrett Wilson was the offensive rookie of the year.
Oh yeah, Garrett Wilson. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm not even counting Breece Hall. Yeah, they had a hell of a draft. Garrett Wilson. Okay, yeah, even better than I thought. Yeah, with Breece Hall. But yeah, they got Garrett Wilson, and they got Sauce, and then they got Breece Hall.
They also had Jermaine Johnson in the first round too.
They did a good job.
Yeah.
Do we revisit, though, from a Texans point of view, that draft, given the fact that Jalen Petrie has now found a different role after a good rookie season, and given the fact that Derek Stingley, I don't think that there's too many people that are unpleased with what Derek Stingley has done.
Well, the conversation on Stingley versus Gardner was not that Sauce Gardner is just this much better, incredible player when they're both on the field. The conversation was, is Derek Stingley going to be on the field? And for the first 2 years, he wasn't. So, like, I mean, as far as like what the skill set is and who the player is, I mean, the long term tells you that a guy like Stingley is going to be better, but he wasn't on the field for 2 years. Injuries drastically affect the first 2 seasons. Sauce was on the field, and Sauce was really good that first year. And ask Jets fans how they feel about him now. It's not very good. It's not very good. They don't love what he's bringing to the table. So, I mean, do we need to revisit 2022? I mean, that 2022 draft still is full of misses. Kenyon Green was a huge miss. There was very clear other avenues in the first round that you could have gone instead of him. Even at the same position, that would have been better. John Mechie was traded up for and hasn't lived up to a second-round billing, and some really good players on offense went after him in that draft. And then, I'm not going to be super critical of 5 on down. But
well, here's the other thing about Sauce that I think is kind of like a different element is that, and this is Dominic, he's in Jersey. He's listening to WFAN all the time. He says Sauce gets killed on the air every day, deservingly so. Terrible attitude on top of his poor play. I think there's like another element, and I don't know that Nick Caserio will ever admit this, but I feel like this was a factor in that Derek Stingley's just about that business to where it's almost awkward when Derek Stingley has to meet with the media, to be honest with you. Like, it's like, hey, he doesn't really want to talk. He just wants to go out there and play and do his thing. And Sauce Gardner is a guy who's on Twitch. He's talking crap. He's tweeting back and forth with fans. He's doing a lot of extra stuff. So there's a lot of extra stuff. And I don't know how D'Amico would have looked at that either. I kind of feel like D'Amico kind of sides with the Stingley side of things as well, just the overall personality. It would be interesting, like, for me, like, the 2022 draft, I don't think you can minimize what the Jets were able to do. Like, I think that was a good job by Joe Douglas. Again, it goes all back to the quarterback. But I do, like, just for like the sake of like a one night party, and this is how I like to party. I would like to go back to the 2022 draft and just for 24 hours see what D'Amico Ryans decides to do with no hindsight, no nothing. Like, we don't know what we know now, but just go back and see with those 2 first-round picks, with the situations that the Texans were in, just see how D'Amico Ryans and Nick Caserio working together would have handled that 2022 draft and what that would have looked like.
Oh, I feel like I have a great bead on what they would have done.
Okay. So you still think they're going Stingley?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're still going Stingley. What are we doing? Is he trying to get Jameson Williams? Is that his goal?
No, they're sticking to picking Kyle Hamilton.
Oh, you think D'Amico's going Kyle? Ooh,
yeah, they're sticking to picking Kyle Hamilton.
On that note,
yeah, and if they don't stick and pick Kyle Hamilton, they're damn sure not drafting Kenyon Green.
Now you just got to ruin my day, man. Although I like Kalen Bullock. I like this secondary. I like this young secondary. I like what they got.
Yeah, it's worth noting. Like,
I like this secondary.
Like, it all played out the way it played out so that they end up with what they have now. So, like, if you told me, hey, Cody, Kyle Hamilton's on this team, but you don't have CJ Stroud and Will Anderson, I'd be like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. Like, I'll take this timeline versus the Kyle Hamilton timeline. I will say this, Landry, just based on how they talk about pre-draft visits. No one's ever confirmed this to me. No one's ever said that my theory is right. I believe that they had zero interest in Sauce Gardner after a pre-draft visit and that they were always going Stingley after that.
No, there's been like a quote that was said.
Caserio talked about having a guy in the building that they didn't really like and this was before the CJ Stroud where he basically won the entire organization over in his pre-draft visit. But Caserio talked about having a guy in the building that they just didn't like the pre-draft. I believe that guy because the results were similar. Sauce had one of the best seasons as a corner, a little bit lesser competition. Stingley had what he had when he was a freshman at LSU. They probably took him off the board after a pre-draft visit.
Yeah, they said something like the way that they handled themselves in the cafeteria. I thought it was kind of weird, but yeah, I think Stingley, Sauce, I think they're both really good players. I think right now the Texans are pleased. I'm with you. I think D'Amico would have gone that direction. I do think this secondary though, like I don't like oh shucks myself with the secondary. I think this secondary is in really good shape in the present and in the future. So I think it all worked out for well. We went a little bit long today. It's Titans week. Gets us kind of jacked up. I'm kind of jacked up on meds, to be honest with you. I took some Dayquil. Last night I was a little nasally, so I'm feeling pretty good.
It feels like the meds hit in the middle and you were starting to feel better.
Just grooving, man. Just grooving. Just, you just gotta battle through it. Little something. Nothing bad, just a little nasally. I think there's a little something going around, but I feel great. I feel great now, right now.
Is the baby healthy?
I didn't know Dayquil had it like that. That's how you do it.
Oh, Dayquil's the best. I accidentally took NyQuil before a test at Texas Tech one time.
Well, you probably did better than you would have had you not, knowing your dumbass.
Yeah, okay. I don't think we want to compare GPAs, bud.
I ended up with a 3.
What?
This pisses off a lot of people like you, and that's the same reaction I get. Zach Rose says we do not fear the diddler of mayonnaise. You can replace your grades there. So like I could fail the same class twice, and then all I had to do was get an A. Like that semester where I took 22 hours and just completely just bogged down and was like all added out and stuff. And then I took the summer classes. You can replace your Fs and your fails with A's. So it just goes away. I ended up with a 3 somehow.
So you went and grade replaced all the bad ones?
Yes, sir.
Good
yes,
for you.
Sir. Yes, sir. How about that? Yeah, don't be too upset, brother. Hey,
GPAs don't matter. GPAs don't matter.
Let's go back to your reaction a minute and a half ago. You seemed a little bit offended there, buddy.
Goalposts have already moved, Landry. You're talking about the past. We're living in the future now.
Appreciate everyone for coming through. Practice going late, man. We got a little later practice today. They pushed that back in the 1 o'clock hour. I'll have the live practice update on my channel. D'Amico Ryans will speak. We'll also get some players in the locker room as well as CJ Stroud. So it will be a very, very fun day. I will say I'm excited for this Titans game. I'm very excited. I think there's a lot of intrigue. I'm not completely dismissing the Titans this week like we kind of were the Cows last week. I think this can be interesting, especially in those trenches. So we'll see how it goes. For Cody Stoots, I'm Landry Locker. Always remember, whether we agree, whether we disagree, whatever, 365 days a year, we got you covered when it comes to this Texan stuff, and we're all in it together.
Eat good, sleep good, be good. We'll talk Texans again soon. Thanks for watching, everybody.